Hey everyone, I'm Heather.
And I'm Ryan.
And we are Confidence Through Cabaret, and we are bringing you another Confidence with Coffee because it's launch day of our new podcast with Diment.
Absolutely, yes it is.
Before we get into that, what are you drinking?
Oh, I'm actually drinking decaf. I'm drinking decaf right now. I'm on the Taylor's blend of decaf because I have run out of my fancy coffee.
Oh, love that for you.
I know. What about you? What are you drinking?
Oh, yeah, just the normal instant Millicano, you know, the usual. Yeah. Anyway, to your possible beauty.
To your possible beauty.
Okay, so Anne was so much fun to be with.
Oh, she really was.
She has this huge toolkit. And in fact, that's her role as a coach, is to help people put together a resilience toolkit, which I love. I'm immediately assembling that. I have a whole bag pictured and all the stuff that's going to go in.
You've got like a go bag ready. You've got a bug out bag.
I fully do. And I actually think that's something that we need to play with. But anyway, so Resilience Toolkit is all about, kind of looking at what will enable you to, to avoid burnout or to manage stress or to be resilient. And most especially to be able to feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with one of the things that I really appreciated about Anne's focus is that one of the things that I think a lot of us can empathize with is we can get really stuck in a cycle. And that can be a cycle of anything, of a negative or positive talk or self-talk or whatever. But we can get stuck into these cycles. And one of the things that Anne helps with is breaking down those cycles. And in fact, we've actually got a little clip that we can show you where Anne kind of breaks down a bit of her sort of reasoning behind how some of the science of it works, as well as how it tesslates with our sort of mindset and mindful practices.
Should we have a listen?
Yeah, let's do it.
All the talks that people do on stress talk about the gazelle that's run away from the lion, and we have this fight, flight, or freeze response when we're triggered or threatened, and the gazelle will play dead, so the lion might lose interest. Once the lion's gone away, the gazelle stands up and just starts shaking, like physically shaking, like because it's having a fit, and that's the processing the cortisol. Yeah. And there's a brilliant book called Burnout by the Nagoski sisters I've just read, and they talk about this because a lot of us are stuck in this stress cycle. We're stuck in this oh, somebody did this to me ages ago and I can't forgive them for it, or he just cut me up and I'm going to get really angry about it, and then you go and tell somebody else and then that triggers you again. You're constantly, it's like the second arrow they call in Buddhism, isn't it? You get wounded by something and then you injure yourself again because you keep opening the wound.
So that was great. And so okay, so I have some questions because so we talked about this afterwards, and we talked about this with Anne, but I forgot to ask during because I was kind of caught up in what we were discussing. Could you explain the Zen arrow or the second arrow theory that Anne was talking about?
Yeah, so it's really it's a positive psychology tool that is about the fact that when something happens, we have an instant response. So if you can imagine that you have two arrows in your quiver and you're a hunter, let's say, because she talks about the gazelle, right? And that so we have the two arrows, and the first one is our response, our kind of instant response.
Yeah.
So we always have a choice between stimulus and response. Something happens, we respond, but there is a choice in between there. Right. And when that cortisol is released, that stress hormone is released, then we very often fire that first arrow. It's like, they made me mad, or, we have a response that feels instinctive or instant. Yeah. And then we have the moment where we have our second arrow and we have a choice of whether or not or when to shoot it and in what way. And so that's the bit where, somebody cuts you off and you maybe make a gesture or say a particular phrase or call them your favorite adjective. Right. And then your second arrow would be the bit where you would decide whether you were going to go and chase them or whether you were going to sit back and just you know, go back to your music or your conversation or whatever you were doing before they cut you off in a car. So I think, you know, it's that bit that we were discussing around the cortisol is released. That's our stress hormone. It circles our body for about 90 seconds.
Right.
And then it should go. And that, like that brief time is enough time for us to recognize when and if and how we should shoot our second arrow.
Right.
But the problem is that we get caught up in this loop where then we go, oh, they're always like this. Oh, driver's here. And then we go into all these other experiences, and they shouldn't be on the road anyway, because we're supposed to be in lockdown. And then we go into that whole thing. And then, and it makes this huge story out of something that ultimately doesn't have very much to do with the original incident.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that, if you live like that in that constant looping negative thoughts, it's very stressful and can be very damaging for us. Sure.
I mean, of course, yeah, because you know, anytime you get stuck in a negative cycle, and certainly I've definitely found this quite a few times. Certainly, anyone who struggles with anxiety will recognize this. You know, you can get very much stuck within a certain looping, and that sort of spirals and gets worse, or continues to stay in its exact same format and just keeps torturing you in its own way. And being able to see a way out of that, or to find, you know, not necessarily to find you know, not necessarily to use a specific technique that Anna said about in her podcast, but certainly finding a technique that works for you to help you break out of that cycle is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, you know, we all should be meditating in some form. We all should have a mindful practice that isn't necessarily sitting quietly. I mean, for me, mindful practice is aerial, because you have to be fully mindful or you'll fall. For some people, it's about tapping. And I know we've talked about tapping before on this podcast, but Anne mentions it about just even tapping the side of your hand. I'm not a qualified tapping expert, nor do I have very much experience in it. But I do find this, or even tapping our two wrists together, I find that quite comforting. It's new to me.
Yeah.
Since we've been doing this podcast and been introduced to it, I find it quite comforting to just sit and tap. You know, but finding that, like, and that's why I love the toolkit, because, you know, there are so many things in it. And there are sometimes, for example, I have a meditation practice, but then there are sometimes I just cannot go near it. I also have an exercise practice, and I can go for weeks without going near it, you know. So having a toolkit, what I love about that analogy is just like, where's your resilience going to come from? And if it's not exercise, and it's not meditation, and it's not journaling, then what else is in your toolkit? And just keep, you know, rifling through it like any usual tool bag, you know, until you find the right one.
Yeah.
Instead of only having a hammer.
Yeah.
And then just hammering everything with it as if it's a nail, because you know, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think one of my favorite tools, and we didn't kind of go into this with Anne, but because we've kind of gone here and into this conversation, is to just really incrementally notice what's positive. And just really notice when something does work, instead of, because we have a negativity bias anyway. So we tend to notice the negative, or we tend to put more emphasis on it, and hold that in our body much more so than the positive. And so, you know, just really noticing the little positive things, just little micro moments, little moments of joy, little moments of, wow, that was really great. Hey, I dusted that shelf. Hey, I finished the room. Hey, you know, instead of focusing on all the bit you haven't done, you know, I did a bit of exercise. I'm terrible for this. I do a bit of exercise and then it's not enough.
Yeah.
Like, well, that was more than I was gonna do. You know,
I only did a bit of exercise and I go, oh, that was too much.
Yeah, but either way, you know, it's like that, you know, we should be going, you know what, I did good. Okay, I only did 5 minutes, but I did good. You know, that's 5 more minutes than I was going to do.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And we've all heard that said before, right? So many times, but making that your practice, that has to be in your toolkit.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But listen to the podcast, Confidence Through Cabaret, wherever you get your podcasts, because there's so much. We cover so many different tools. We talk about Anne's story. We talk about, you know, how she came to buy these tools. We talk about her stage life, which is always fun. And, you know, and have a little artist moment.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a lovely little artist moment. It was very fun.
Yes. So check out Confidence Through Cabaret wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can find everything on confidencethroughcabaret.com.
Yeah.
So if you go there, then you'll find our podcast, you'll find our vodcast, you'll find our video logs, which are from YouTube. You can also find them on Confidence Through Cabaret. You can find all of the things on our landing page, confidencethroughcabaret.com, or you can just go to any socials, Confidence Through Cabaret, period, except for Twitter. And Twitter is at YBYWYS. I am on Clubhouse fairly often these days now. I am at Heather YBYWYS, and we have a brand new Confidence Through Cabaret club, which is called Confidence and Attitudes. So join us there. Anywhere, you are so welcome. Our Facebook community is the perfect place if you like the idea of a resilience toolkit. That's the perfect place to find it and start gathering, because we've got so many cool people with things that they share and you know, advice that they're seeking that others, you know, answer. And so if you want to build your resilience toolkit for you, for real, then jump into the Confidence Through Cabaret community on Facebook.
Yes.
So Ryan, tell us about where the Twitter and Clubhouse letters come from.
Well, they are reminding you that it is your body, your world, your stay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye. Bye.